Since January soon is past, I think I speak on behalf of all Norwegians when I say that we're looking forward to daylight reappearing into our lives again. Hi, I'm Øystein and I'm trying to become a bookworm, and in that process I try to inspire you to do the same. In this video we're going to talk about the books I bought in January, and I sort of compensate for not buying too many books in December, which is not a good idea, but that's what I've done. And this is what I'm currently reading. Can you hear the sound? That's the sound of too many pages. And so the theme of this book haul will be shorter or lightly read books. So if you're not looking for lightly read books, you can go to one of my other videos. I usually try only buying thrifted books, but this month I've bought quite a few new books because they are newly publicated, and I try to read a couple of new books. And also new books are often more easily read. And these are also quite popular, so in some years they will appear on the used market, but not for now. I think we'll just jump straight in, and the first book is Things My Son Needs to Know About the World by Fredrik Backman. The author is maybe most known for A Man Called Ove, which many people have read, and this book came out in 2012. I actually saw the movie for A Man Called Ove some years ago and did not know about the book until I started this channel. I'm wondering about reading the book because the movie was amazing in my opinion. And this book I've already read. I'm going to talk more about this book later in the wrap-up, but I can say one thing: I cried. Just to give you an idea what this book is about, I can name one or two of the chapters, and one of the first chapters are what you need to know about motion-sensitive toilet lights, and what you need to know about garden airports. I think the chapters pretty much sums it up, because this book is full of nonsense, and the serious bits are kinda cheesy, but I still loved it. So that was the first book. The next book in this segment of small books is the last year's International Booker Prize winner, and that's David Diop with At Night All Blood is Black. And this book is about a man from Senegal which is joining the French army, or forced to join the French army during the First World War. Here he sees one of his friends die in combat, and he begs to be killed himself instead of going through the desert and dying there slowly. He is not allowed to die, and the rest of the book is said to be a descent into madness, which is also kind of fun because that was also the theme of When We Cease to Understand the World, which was also shortlisted for the same prize, and I enjoyed that book very much, so I think this will be an interesting read. When you try to Google this book, the first thing that pops up is what did actually happen in the end. That makes me kind of terrified that this will be a confusing read, but nevertheless it's a short book, which I love at this moment, and I will read it, and hopefully it's great. If Cats Disappeared from the World is the title of the next book, and it's from Genki Kawamura. I don't know if you can see this, but the cat seems to have very frightening eyes. They're sort of glowing straight at me. This book is about a man that receives a diagnosis and is told he's going to die. He then goes out to go through his bucket list, but suddenly he meets the devil, and the devil tells him if you can extinct one thing from the world, you'll get another day. And I read somewhere that he is in for a bizarre week. And I think that's a very cool setup for a book. It seems so plot twisty, which I will enjoy a lot, and also I think this will be a emotional roller coaster. I sort of predicted I would love this book quite a lot, not only because it's short, but this is short also, so that is great. And yes, I'm very size conscious at this moment, but that's only because I know I have to read 5 big books in this year, and it sort of stresses me out a bit, not too much. I don't know if it's too early calling him my favorite writer, but the next book is from Neil Gaiman, and it's Stardust. Many of my friends that have read this book says it's quite different from the other books he's written, and I've also read somewhere that his writing style is quite different in this book. I don't know if that's a positive, or I think it's a negative, but we'll see. This book is also supposed to have a lot more romance than the other books, which I also do not know what I think about. I've liked the romance in some of his other books, but that's just because the romance is often so cynical or mean or weird, which I enjoy. As with the book Neverwhere, this book also seems to be set in England and has a parallel universe. I could not fathom the plot in simple terms, but it's a person going to chase a star so he can marry a woman. Something like that. I do not really care either, because I think I will love this book as well, as I've done with all Neil Gaiman's books, except American Gods. And while we're on the subject, I talked about this book, Neverwhere, which I've read and enjoy, and one of the characters in that book is Marquis. So I bought How the Marquis Got His Coat Back by Neil Gaiman. And this is more a short story, but I'm counting it as one book, even though the page count is 58 pages. This story can't be not funny, because Marquis is one of the funniest people in Neverwhere, and he lost his coat, and now he wants it back, apparently. So I'm looking forward to this read. I'm sort of throwing books today. And now for a brief moment of seriousness in between all of these other not so serious books, and that's Devil on the Cross by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. His name always pops up in the Norwegian public when we talk about future Nobel Prize for Literature winners, and that's why I thought I had to read him. Thiong'o is a Kenyan author, and he wrote this book while imprisoned, and he wrote it on toilet paper in secret. That is just a mind-blowing fact, and almost enough for me to want to read the book alone. The story is a tragic one, and it's about a woman that travels to Nairobi from the rural parts of Kenya, and there she meets a corrupt businessman which exploits her, and the story is about how she realizes the damages of Western capitalism on Kenyan society. This is of course one of his most well-known books, and that's why I picked it, but it's also said to have a major influence on other African writers. So looking forward to reading this book, although I think this will be one of the shorter books that takes some time to read. Now we're going to do a Who is Who of BookTok, BookTube, and BookTok books. And the first one is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, which won the Goodreads Choice Awards in 2016. Firstly, I have to say something that also regards the next two books, and that's I love the form factor of these books. They're so nice to hold, and the writing is with the big font, which I always love. And this book is around 350 pages, but you sort of run through these books just because they're so easily read, and I love that fact. Also, I like the pink color, and I need some color for the book spines. Not that I have the most boring color of the spines behind me, but in the future, if I read boring big books, they tend to be brown, gray, black, something like that, so I need some color in between. I think I'll read a quote from this book, just because I think that's more rightfully descriptive of what's the content of this book. It Ends With Us is a book that follows a girl named Lily who has just moved and is ready to start her new life after college. Lily then meets a guy named Ryle, and she falls for him. As she is developing feelings for Ryle, Atlas, her first love, reappears and challenges the relationship between Lily and Ryle. I do not know why I'm going to read this book, but it's one of those books that I just think I will enjoy the process of reading, and that's probably why. So what is the most logical move when you bought the 2016 Goodreads Choice Awards winner? Well, it's buying Little Fires Everywhere, the 2017 winner by Celeste Ng. I bought this book for the cover, not this cover, but the original cover, which really intrigued me. It seems to have a very mystical atmosphere to it, and of course the book is a mystery book, so I thought that was very fitting. It's about a suburban area where everything's perfect, and this woman in particular tends to it, so it stays that way. But suddenly a single mother and her daughter moves here, and their past threatens the status quo of the community. I suspect that I will enjoy this book, but I don't suspect anything extra, so if it has anything extra, I will be happy. And which book was all over my Instagram last year? Well, it was The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This is a fantasy novel, and a lot of people has also tagged it as a YA novel, which I haven't read that many of before, so that will be a cool experience. Had to think a bit. I don't think I've read any books characterized as YA, but I'm going to read a phrase that intrigued me to read this book. Linus Baker leads a quiet, solitary life. At 40, he lives in a tiny house with a devious cat and is all records. As a caseworker at the department in charge of magical youth, he spends his days overseeing the well-being of children in government-sanctioned orphanages. A magical island, a dangerous task, a burning secret. I suspect that last phrase is going on the front cover of the movie they're making at some point. I do not know if they're making a movie, I'm just suspecting that they will. And now let's see if I love these 3 books for their size and their large letters, or if it's the stories that count. I at least just like holding these books. And for those who don't like the unfloppiness of these books, I haven't yet made up my mind about what I think about it, but I'll think about it when I read these books. I should probably have a secondary cam so you can watch my throwing books at another table in slow-mo. I've had too much coffee today. That's why. The next book is the book I thought was going to be the shortest one until the Neil Gaiman book arrived. And it's a book that I'm pretty sure will make me cry. And that's The Little Prince by, and I'm going to take a deep breath now, Anton de Saint-Exupéry. That's my best shot. This book has sold over 140 million copies, and it's the world's most sold children's book. So I'm guessing that 80% of you have already read it. When I've heard people talking about it earlier, they all start talking about this book with the sentence, "So you probably know what happens in the end." And I really don't. I suspect that it has something to do with the child dying, which is my absolute least favorite thing to read about, because I tend to not forget those books. If that's a good thing or bad thing, I don't know. This book originally came out in 1943, and the thing that fascinated me the most while reading about the novel is the life of the author, because he was a pilot, a commercial pilot before the Second World War. He wanted to be a pilot in the Second World War, and he was until the ceasefire between France and Germany in 1940. And he then moved to the US and tried to get the US forces to join the war on Allied side. And it was in the US that he actually published the books. And then he went back to Europe, and he died in 1944 in a plane crash on a mission for the French army. It's a quite wild story, I would say. But of course, this is a must-read, and I planned on reading children's novels this year, so this will count as one of them, even though grown-ups are the ones who read it. In Norwegian, the next book is called Profetene I Evighetsfjorden, but in English, the book is called The Prophets of Eternal Fjord, which I just thought sounded very much like a Norwegian black metal band. It at least sounded very much more black metal than the Norwegian title, at least. It's a book by the Danish author Kim Leine, and it came out in 2012. Kim Leine is one of the most famous Danish writers, and he won the Nordic Council Literature Prize for this book. So this is a series of books which are very famous, and it's set in the late 1700s, and it's about the journey to the Greenland and the fight between the Inuits and the Danish rule. And I will be very interested to read about it. Historical fiction seemed to have an appeal to me, and so this book might be one of the books that will make an impact. That's what I suspect, at least. The last book on this list today is a book that I really want to read, and it's The Mazda Margherita by Mikhail Bulgakov. This book was actually published in 1967, but it was written in between 1928 and 1940, and was also actually finished by his wife. It was written in the Soviet Union, and when it was first published, it was quite censored because it had a very satirical view on Soviet life, so the government didn't want a lot of talk about this book. I have no idea how to summarize this book. It contains unearthly creatures. It's set in Moscow, but also antiquity Jerusalem. We meet Satan and his mistress or something like that. I think I will read this book and then I can come up with a summary later on, because I've tried to read about this book so many times, but I just can't figure it out. And I think that's part of the idea. That concludes this book haul for this month, And if you have suggestions for smaller books to read, I'm still very much looking for smaller books, so leave them in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching my videos. I'm looking forward to reading a lot of books in February and seeing you all again. So thank you for watching again, and I'll see you next time. Bye!